What's up? Welcome to Critical Point Reviews. I saw Pacific Rim today. Leroy did not, but there's not.
That's probably a good thing, I guess.
Well, let's get. Let's get to the first thought segment.
Right.
First thoughts. I was kind of anticipating it. The closer I got to it, I guess the lower my expectations started getting, because it just looked more like a straight up action movie, and I'm a big fan of the director Guillermo del Toro, and he's directed the two Hellboy movies, Pan's Labyrinth, which is an amazing movie, Pan's Labyrinth, Chronos, and Devil's Backbone. Those are all three, and Blade 2.
Yeah.
Blade 2.
I love that movie.
Okay, Blade 2 and the two Hellboy movies are the three English movies directed. Chronos, Pan's Labyrinth, and The Devil's Backbone are all Spanish movies. I've seen all but The Devil's Backbone. Supposedly that's a ghost story. Haven't seen it. But I heard it was good. But I've enjoyed every single one of his movies that I've seen. And I think they're all of really good, quality. And this movie, it was okay. It's kind of like a lot of people say, oh, it's got really awesome action sequences, stuff we really haven't seen, and not so much. So that's my first thoughts.
If I could say my first thoughts.
Yes.
I mean, I looked at it and I didn't know what to think about it because, for one, it never really showed or expressed there was a story to it. And why this was happening was just kind of like, here are these monsters, we're going to fight back with machines. And I was a big fan of Power Rangers growing up, but, it didn't really, it seemed like there was nothing there. And I wasn't sure what to like about it. But, I heard, De'Armond was over it, but,
Well, they did explain why the monsters were there.
Yeah. But still, it just kind of seemed like it was just a stretch. Like, probably, like, I would have liked it to hear, okay, there's going to be a lot more stuff involving the humans, on foot, like almost like a war situation. But when it was like basically monsters versus machine, it was like I don't know what they're gonna be able to do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, they were a movie that they really did a good job with that, and you know what I mean. So I wasn't sure.
But I'll go ahead and get into the story time segment, the plot. There's really not too much plot to this, to be honest with you. There's these monsters that come out of this the rift in the Pacific Ocean, and they're called kaiju, which is Japanese for monster. It's that's what's been the kaiju genre.
Okay.
Godzilla, Mecha Godzilla, Mothra, all that. Del Toro was a huge fan of this. So, then
if they made a Godzilla, that probably
they actually are making a new Godzilla.
Okay,
but
that might be cool.
But they come out of the rift in the ocean, and so humans try to stop the monsters. With you don't really actually see them put up a force. You assume they do. That you don't really see, but they're like, okay, well, we need something that's strong enough to defeat these monsters, and they build what they call the Jaegers. Something like that. Jaegers. I forget how you pronounce it. Jager, and that's German for the robot. The big robot. I guess it's robot. They said in the beginning. Really, it doesn't matter. And then it's just essentially a war between them two, and it puts you pretty much, ironically, they kind of do like a, what are those called? Golly.
Flashback?
Not a flashback. Where they show a montage. They kind of montage like everything that happened up to the final days of the war, and that's kind of what you see is the final days of the war. Okay. Ironically, so you don't really get too much of an origin necessarily story. They bring you right in.
That sounds unfortunate.
They bring you right in. Well, they bring you right into the action with the beginning, and it's essentially between a war between humans trying to save humanity with the big machines versus the versus the kaiju monsters, and so that sounds appealing to you. Go see it. Now let me get into the. Okay, this is where they get into it. Let me go ahead and get into the review. The way I felt about this movie, like, I kind of put it to Independence Day. Like, this would be like a Japanese Independence Day.
Is that a good thing?
I don't know. It all depends on how you feel about
I
Independence
mean, I
Day.
liked Independence Day.
I liked
But
Independence Day,
that was like people fighting the aliens.
but even still, this is it. You have that same like the script felt like almost like an anime. Like
Okay.
like some of the
Gundam.
yes,
Gundam
or
Wing?
even in
Gundam
general
Wing?
like any anime. Like I've only really watched Dragon Ball Z when I was a kid, and so that's kind of all I can resort to.
Mm-hmm.
But even some of the characters kind of look straight ripped out of anime, and I realized kaiju. I don't know if they have kaiju, the big monster anime. I know Godzilla originated in Japan, but the script was really written really cheesy and really bad, and I don't know if he was trying to look at all the kaiju because I mean if you go back and watch the original Godzilla, it's still but the script it's real cheesy. But at the same time, I feel like this is a point to where why not actually make a good kaiju script, a good monster script like that, a good Japanese monster script versus going. And I realize you may be trying to pay an homage, but you could have elevated the material. And I'm like, that's great, we have that, and in fact, that's Godzilla is still the original Godzilla is a historically significant movie. Mm-hmm. But that's great, we have that. But why not elevate the material? You know what I'm saying? And so the script came off really. Some of the lines were cringeworthy. It was pretty. It was like, ew.
I see.
But but the acting was okay. Some of it was bad. Some of it was really good.
Was there anything you particularly liked about the movie?
Yes, the action sequences.
So the action.
The action, and I'll say this about the action. Like everyone's been the action. That's what you're going into this movie for. Here's my problem with that. The pacing, it's too long. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes. I think it's 2 hours and 10 minutes. It's way too long. They bring you pretty much, the opening sequence is kind of a big action sequence. Wasn't too impressed with that, to be honest. I was like, well, this is how the whole movie's going to be. I'm really not all that impressed. It was cool, but I was like, I've seen other stuff just like it before. I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but this is, we're talking like, maybe 2.5. Mm-hmm. And then it started getting to more, more to the, you had a long stretch, and that was just kind of the humans. And so they are trying to pull on the humanistic side, but again, with that weak script and kind of weak characters. I will throw out the main actor was kind of weak. I know he's in Sons of Anarchy. I have never seen Sons of Anarchy, but I know a lot of people like the show, so I assume he does good in Sons of Anarchy, but I just don't know. I forget his first name, but it's Hunnam. I know is his last name. Really wasn't that good. He kind of played a one-note character. Mm-hmm. It was just like, okay. And some of it was kind of, it just didn't do that good. He was more bad, but he wasn't, completely awful, but it was like, okay. Yeah, it's like, all right, you're really not that good.
Did he remind you at all of Armie Hammer?
Yeah. Well, no, because Armie Hammer was just dry for me. Like, he played the same, like, when it was just like, I just didn't really enjoy that character in general, and his performance, I didn't really enjoy either. This character could have been enjoyed, if that makes sense, but the way he portrayed it and the way the script was, like, the way that like they wrote the character, it's just the dialogue they gave him wasn't all that enjoyable. Most of the other, there was Charlie Day and Idris Elba, especially Idris Elba, but Charlie Day was pretty good. He's from Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Horrible Bosses is the only two things. He was pretty funny. He gives the comedic relief. I enjoyed his character. Now, every single character in this movie seemed like caricatures that we've seen, like completely ripped out. Like they had like a real like kind of like a British like nerd scientist. But I mean, I forget, he played in The Dark Knight Rises. I forget his name, but he was pretty good. Him and Charlie Day, like I said, it was caricatures. Idris Elba played the general. He was in Thor. He was the gatekeeper in Thor.
Exactly what you're talking about.
And God, gosh, he played in
He
something
played
else.
on a show called The Wire on HBO. He was actually really good.
Yeah, I heard, and then he's on a new BBC show called Luther, which I heard was really good.
I was wondering about that too.
Yeah, I heard Luther was phenomenal.
Like
oh yeah, but he was great. Like
I should have brought it. It was on sale.
Dang it, man! Dang it!
I should have
But yeah, he was great. He was in Prometheus too. That's the movie.
Prometheus. Yeah.
He's always great. Like I really, and he was just as great. And he like every time he was on the screen, I was like, bring him back on because like he was the best. In my opinion, he was the best, and Charlie Day was the second. But honestly, it was just like the characters were written thin with bad dialogue, which is kind of why I go back to Independence Day because the dialogue is not exactly strong in Independence Day.
But I mean, for its time, it probably wasn't that bad either.
Yeah, but you go watch. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, if you go back and watch it, it's definitely a little bit more time.
But and also, it felt like I don't know if this will necessarily catch its audience because it felt like I said it felt like an anime. It felt very. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It felt not American the way the dialogue was written. It felt more of in a Japanese style. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that's Del Toro. Like he is he's very passionate about all his projects. I'm sure he's like, well, we have to write it this way because it's just. And so I don't know if I would have probably written it more just in a way. It just didn't seem like in some of the ways it talked. It seemed that very just kind of like anime kind of cheesiness. And there's definitely a time, but like if you're trying to bring that to the American audience, I don't know if that's really going to sell well. Yeah. I could be wrong. The action sequences, like I said, the beginning was kind of, and it had like flashbacks in the kind of long stretch you had before the next big action sequence, and they had one really cool action sequence that was in the day. And most of these in fact, every single one but that one are all filmed at night, and about 75% of them are filmed in the rain. So it's kind of like,
Is it in Seattle or something? Or?
No, it's well, yeah, because we live in Florida, so one of my buddies, I went and saw, he's like, man, they must have filmed it in Florida because it's been raining here constantly. Right, but that was actually really cool. It only lasted about maybe 30 seconds, but I was like, dang, I hope we see more of that because that was really cool. And then they go in the middle action sequence, which was actually a pretty awesome action sequence. I was like, yeah, man, like some of the stuff they did in there was really cool. Now there is a certain part where this isn't necessarily a spoiler, but it was still an awesome action sequence, but it's probably 20-minute action sequence. But at the very end, they finally pull out this awesome sword. I'm like, well, why didn't you pull that out in the beginning? You know what I'm saying? But it was still, that was actually a really cool action sequence, and honestly, the movie could have ended right there, even though like. They wouldn't have. I don't know if it's going to make enough money for a sequel, and they could have wrapped it up for a sequel. I felt that was long enough for me right there, but then it continued on. The final action sequence really wasn't near as good as the middle one, and so I was like, oh, okay, Ron Perlman was in this too. I'm a big fan of Ron Perlman. Ron Perlman kind of played Ron Perlman, but I like Ron Perlman. He played in Hellboy. He was Hellboy.
Oh, the guy.
Yeah.
I thought I saw him.
Yeah. So I like his comedic style.
He was in Blade too.
Yeah. He's in every single one of Del Toro's movies, I think, besides a couple of the Spanish ones. But yeah, I enjoyed his. He brought a good comedic, but you kind of saw how it was gonna go. It was pretty much. You could have pretty much said everything, and you would have probably been right, like before you walked through the movie. Okay. But it's nothing really special. It's fun. Like if you went on a matinee and it's like, hey, I kind of want to see what the Pacific Rim thing's about. It may be just for you. In fact, if you're a big fan of that Japanese monster style, you may enjoy it a lot more than I. Like I don't really know too much about the genre. I'm not that big of a fan. I'm not going to profess to be. So for me, it's probably I would have to go everything probably a 3-. I think it's worth a watch, and I think you really may enjoy it, but at the same time, you may be like, all right, I was just bored out of my mind. There may not be nothing there for you. If you're a fan, like I said, if you're a huge fan of the genre, you may love the movie. But I felt like, and knowing Del Toro, he could have easily elevated the material, and I felt like he just stuck with the material that was already there. And some of the action sequences were cool. But don't be fooled by the hype that a lot of the critics are saying, like, oh, yeah, the action delivers. It does in the big middle scene. But I think past that, it's like... Yeah. But yeah, that's it. So again, I gave it a 3 minus.
And I would give the trailer a 2.5 plus.
Yeah. So that's it. I wouldn't say pay full price. If you really want to see it, go see it. Oh, by the way, we saw it in 3D. Don't want to see it in 3D. We had no choice, and in fact, there really wasn't too many 2D showings. I don't know why, but don't go see it. I mean, the 3D wasn't bad, but
Yeah.
I mean, it had some effects, but it was just like it was everything I've
I
seen
would have
before.
expected the rain to be pretty cool in 3D, but
They had they had some snow and it was pretty cool, but it's like I've seen that effect used before. And it's like I'm not really. This really wasn't a movie that, especially when it was rain and dark, and usually 3D kind of dims a picture anyway. I would actually, I really want to see this movie in 2D. There wasn't necessarily anything too good in 3D, but yeah, just a 3 minus, and that's pretty much my wrap up. So, you've seen Pacific Rim. What do you think about it? Were you a huge fan of the genre going in before, or did it completely blow your mind and not even loving the genre? So let us know, and also stay tuned. It will be somewhere floating about right here, and the link for our podcast episode 2. So thank you.